Today we have verses 58, 59, and 60 of chapter 18 of the Bhagwad Gita. We will start with 58. I will chant. Machetah sarvadurgani mat prasadat rishyasi अथ चेतवम् अहङ्कारात् न श्रोष्यसि विनङ्ग्यसि. So, this verse number 18, translates to, verse number 58 translates to, fixing the mind on me, you shall, by my grace, overcome all obstacles. However, if from egoism you will not listen now, you will perish. So, this is what the verse translates to. So, let's take this up word by word. Mat chittaha. So, chit, fix, that is the mind. So, mat chit is fixing the mind on me, that Paramatman. Sarv Durgani, Durgam is what is difficult or an obstacle. Sarv Durgani, so that Sarv is all. So Sarv Durgani becomes all obstacles. Mad Prasadat. So when we recollected the verses, I think verse number 56 used that word. By my grace, my prasad, by Lord's grace. Tarishyasi, that means overcomes. Ataha now, Chetaha, if this chet is different. Tvam, you, ahankarat, from egoism. Ahankar is ego, ahankarat becomes from ego. Na not, shroshyasi, will listen. Vingyasi is you will perish. So fixing the mind on me, you shall by my grace overcome all obstacles. However is implied, just to make it grammatically correct. However, if from egoism you will not listen now, you will perish. So let's chant it together. मचेतः सर्वदुर्गाणि मत्प्रसादात् रिष्यसि अथ चेतवमकारात् शोष्यसि विनग्यसि. So the Lord Krishna has advised Arjun what to do in the previous verse that we just recapped those 4 points, which in a sense was saying that by your thoughts, by your chit, renounce all your activities in me. Because now, if we summarize here why we should be doing that, all our actions in the world are enabled by God. So when we are doing any activity, we should be aware of the presence of God, because it is only in His presence we are able to perform. The fact that I'm able to talk, that same thing that you're able to hear when you ask, respond, I'm able to reply back. All this is happening by the grace of God, actually, in the presence of God, by His enablement. So, without that God, no action is ever possible. Also, we have been reading in the Bhagwad Gita that is the supreme goal. That is the ultimate goal for mankind, to become one with that Paramatman. So we should be constantly aware of all this. And when we are aware of God and God being our ultimate goal, with that awareness, the body and mind will come under the aegis of the intellect. So we will listen to our intellect, to our discrimination, and they will all work in unison. Now, in this verse, Lord Krishna is saying that by constant thoughts of the Paramatman, and by giving or renouncing, giving up all activities to Him, that means doing everything for Him, we shall overcome our obstacles through His grace. So the only thing that is required is that we have to think of Him keep our mind on him and act. Now, keeping our minds on him does not mean mechanically chanting, Ram, Ram, Allah, Allah, Christ, Christ, or whatever. It means being constantly aware of him. So when I'm speaking, I should be aware that the fact that my organ of action is able to function in the way I expect it to, because of the grace of God. It's actually a wonder. We take it for granted. Sight, touch, everything we take for granted. But if you think of it and just sit for 5 minutes and just think about all our sense organs and our organs of action, we will realize that what a wonder by itself each thing is, which we are taking for granted. So that means we have to be aware of that and not merely chant a mantra or something. So we have to be constantly aware of him and surrender to him, or our entire personality is oriented towards God. And in and through our physical and mental subtle layers, we are actually supposed to be unfolding our personality. And this is the peeling off of the layers of our personality, from the gross body to the subtle, to the subtler, and finally the subtlest. That is what the Kathopanishad is actually talking about. So, from the gross body, you go to your mental, emotional level, then you move on to your intellectual, and ultimately to that subtlest of them all, that Paramatman, which is there in all of us. So now see what happens when we start identifying with something, we become that. So when we identify with our gross body, we become a physical being. We are always worried about how we are looking and how the other person is looking. All our experiences tend to be very, very, physical. So we are looking for physical experiences. We identify with physical problems, physical pleasures. That is the level we are working with. Now, if the identification is with the mind, we become emotional. That means we are seeking emotional experiences, emotional problems, those agony aunt columns in the magazines, emotional pleasures. So we are functioning at that level. Similarly, when we are identifying with the intellectual level of our personality, it makes us intellectual. Extending the logic, when we align ourselves, we start identifying with the Supreme. And that will take us to that supreme state of bliss. And in that state of bliss, we are free of all obstacles. There is nothing that is difficult for us, or what is Durgam for us, as the verse is saying. And His grace actually means God's presence. That's it. Now, verse number 56 of the chapter that we just recapped said that it is through God's grace that we reach the eternal, indestructible abode. And at that point of time, we had also discussed that God's grace is universal. That means it is there for everyone to take. It's just like the sunlight, which is available to all. It is up to us whether we take it or block it. Of course, today being a overcast day, so the clouds may disrupt it. But if you go up to the higher level, you will find it clear and the sunlight is there. So, when we are creating an obstruction in the flow of divinity, we will obviously be denied the grace. So, when we are not obstructing anything or we are fixing our mind on Paramatman, the grace will automatically be invoked. So, therefore, repeatedly, what is being said is that we should devote all our actions to Him, take His full support, fix our mind on Him, then by His grace, by God's grace, in this verse is specifically saying that all our obstacles and all our difficulties will be resolved or will be removed. Now, the second line is a warning for Arjun, and of course, through Arjun to us. So Lord goes on to warn Arjun that if you take shelter in egoism, or if out of egoism one disregards the eternal laws, one will perish. Now, see, there are certain laws which are in place by Paramatman, and that is how the entire creation is functioning smoothly on its own. But if out of egoism, our ego, we disregard these natural laws, these instructions, and we think that we are more capable, we can do better than what has been prescribed, or which is how the universe is running, and we ignore the directions which our scriptures are showing us, we will first and foremost fail to attain the goal of human life, which is reaching God or moksha, and consequently, the what, because that is the ultimate goal, we are not even going towards it, we will perish. That is what the verse is saying. Now, the important part, the word used here is out of ego. So, what is egoism? You may recollect that in chapter 13, this was the Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga, where we were talking about the distinction between, the field and the knower of the field. So the material layers and the ultimate knower of those material layers. Ahankar was discussed in amongst the material layers in verse number 6. And then we had discussed in detail that ahankar is what? It's I-ness, possessiveness, doership. All these arise from our ahankar. Ahankar or ego connects impulses of the mind with the decisions of the intellect. And it instills a feeling of doership. I am the doer. I am the winner. I am the loser. I am the, victim. Now, if we think about it, what is our in the entire creation? If we see our mass or our composition and compare it to the entire universe, our contribution by mass in the entire creation is insignificant. We are really, if we were not there, it would not really make too much of a difference. But our ego makes us feel very, very special. And we are ready to take on the world if need be. And our ego makes us feel that we are the most important person. The entire creation is there to serve us. We are the Lord, we are the master of the universe. So it makes us feel above the creation and not a part of the creation. So, and why does this happen? Why does this ego come into play? Because we have a strong identification with the ego, with our body. Ego is part of those material layers. So, if there is confusion, you can go back to that verse 6 of chapter 13, where we had discussed this in detail. So, we identify very strongly with our body, and hence the ego comes into the play. And then we forget about the eternal laws that, it's our karmas will always come back to us. These eternal laws, you sow what you reap. You reap what you sow. These are eternal laws. We forget these eternal laws. We think that they are made for the rest of the creation, not for us. Right? However, these law of nature, they are irrevocable. We cannot bypass them, and they continue with their rhythm. They will mercilessly continue to be in force, right? Therefore, it is important for us that we understand and implement these laws. If we don't, we will face the consequences of these laws, which we have been discussing over the course of the Bhagwad Gita in different chapters. So, one of them, for example, is the law of gravity, which is a natural law. I mean, so if you're on earth, you will be pulled down by a particular force. Earth is in orbit around the sun by the gravitational force of the sun on earth, and so on and so forth. So Coming back to the law of gravity, which we attribute to Newton, if Newton himself were to jump from the floor of a building, he would perish by the same law which is attributed to him. Now, again, that attribution is, it's not that it was only after Newton that law of gravity came into force. It was there since the time Earth was created. So it was always there. The point I'm trying to make here is that the law will be as applicable to Newton, to whom the law is attributed in the Western science, as to me or you. So all of us are governed by that law. So it applies equally, or the eternal laws apply equally to all creation. Now, when we have our ego surrender to these laws or to God, through these laws, we are actually connecting to God, or we are surrendering to God. That surrender is not possible. So, because of one's ego, one is not able to hear, which is the word which is used here. Here, HEAR here means understand this great philosophy that Lord Krishna is explaining to us. And if out of egoism we start disregarding these laws, we shall perish, both materially and spiritually. And this is not a threat or a tyrannical power or one of those religious threats. No, it's not that. It is telling us to align ourselves to these natural laws. And the natural laws actually apply to the entire creation. So it doesn't matter whether you are a Hindu or a Christian and so on and so forth. They are irrespective of the religion, they apply to all human beings. What is being told to us is that we have to focus on the significance of the natural laws, which are actually beyond religion, and if we don't follow them, we will perish. So that is what verse number 58 is saying. Perish here means that we will not attain God, which is the ultimate goal for mankind. Let's move on to verse number 59. Yadahangkaramashritya न योत्सय इति मन्यसे मिथ्येष व्यवसास्यते प्रकृतिस्तां नियोक्ष्यति. So the verse translates, if taking shelter in egoism, you think I will not fight, vain is this resolve of yours. Your nature will compel you. So let's take this up word by word. Yat, which, ahankaram, egoism, ashritah is, ashraya we have discussed, is taking shelter. So ashrita becomes having taken shelter in, na not, yotsaya, will fight. Iti, thus, manyase is when you think. So think, mithya is vain. Esh, this, vyavasai, resolve, thought, te, your, prakriti, nature, thwam, you, niyokshyati, will compel. So, if taking shelter in egoism, you think I will not fight, vain is this resolve of yours, your nature will compel you. So, let's chant it together. यदहङ्कारमाश्रित्य न योत्सय इति मन्यसे मिथ्येष व्यवसायस्ते प्रकृतिस्त्वां नियोक्ष्यति. With this verse, as we are concluding now the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is bringing the philosophy of the entire discourse of the Bhagavad Gita, which he started from verse number 11 of chapter 2 till now, into Arjun's immediate problem on the Kurukshetra battlefield with a word of caution. So let's see how it's going. Now, Lord Krishna, from the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, has advised Arjun to give up the idea of doership and fight the righteous war. This we have been reading chapter 2 onwards, chapter 2 and chapter 3. So now Lord Krishna is saying that even if under the influence of your ego, Arjun is to think that I will not fight. That means doership. It is vain. It is a vain thought, both literally and metaphorically. So, vain because it's a waste and out of vanity, right? The point is that Arjun may think that he has come to the conclusion to fight or not to fight the war. However, he will fight. Arjun will fight because that is what his Arjun's nature is. Arjun's nature or swabhav or swadharm will seek expression. He is a kshatriya of passionate nature, has rajasic nature, and it will assert itself. This is true, just like you see a workaholic person. So, a workaholic never retires. Every year, the workaholic may think that, okay, this year I will definitely call it, I'll say bye to work and I'll pick up my hobbies, but it doesn't happen. It goes on year after year. That is the nature of the person. The nature of the person will compel the person to continue with whatever work that person is doing and not to retire. Now, if we look at the current context, Arjun has been raising arguments for not fighting the battle right from chapter 1 and up to the verse number 10 of chapter 2. And all these uh, logic, wrong logic, illogical things that he was mentioning as excuses or arguments for not fighting the battle were actually compromises being made because of his ego. The compromise is between his nature and the unpleasant situation which he is facing. So, Lord Krishna, what he's saying is that even if you resolve not to fight, so give up action. Arjun's action, correct, righteous action in this situation is to fight. So, in case he decides to give up action and does not fight the righteous war, actually he cannot, because his own nature will compel him to fight the war. And in case he does not, he will always be fighting with his resolve for not fighting the battle. That is the battle within. So either which ways he will be fighting. The current physical situation has called for Arjun's kshatriya prowess, and it is a great way to exhaust his vasanas. So we have done all that theory through the various chapters that it is because of our vasanas that we take birth. So Arjun's vasanas are rajasic. He is a kshatriya, and the current battle is a great way for him to exhaust his vasanas. And even if Arjun were to follow this temporary mood of escapism and run away from the battlefield, it is an eternal law. This is again one of the laws that to which we have to surrender, that our nature will assert itself. So even Arjun's nature will assert itself later when maybe he may not have the field to express himself and exhaust his vasanas. So this is what the Lord is saying. And now see how logically, I mean, we should also appreciate how scientifically a scripture is presented to us. And of course, this chapter, which is the summary of the Bhagwad Gita, see, we talked about the gunas from the beginning of the chapter, then our personality attributes were mapped onto the gunas. Then we Lord talked about our aligning our vocation with our nature, a swadharma, and then he talked about the paths, or summarized actually here, summarized the path of karma yoga, which was verses 46, 47, 48, and 49 of this chapter. In detail, we had covered it in chapter 3, 4, and 5. Then he moved on with the summary of the Gyan Yoga, verses 51, 52, and 53. And this actually we've been covering in detail in chapter 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and also actually those 13 for gun was in chapter 14. So a whole lot of it is chapters are tell us about the Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, which was specifically covered in chapter 12. But here the verses that we just recapped, the summary was given verses number 54 and 55. So after explaining all this, after logically tying it up, our vasanas to our dharma, to our essence, the Lord is now cautioning Arjun not to go against his nature. That is, in a sense, what he's saying. And also, you may recollect, and I will quote these verses here 40 and 41 of this chapter, that there is no being on earth, nor even in heaven, among the gods who is liberated from these gunas, qualities which are born out of matter. And then 41 talked about the duties of the castes, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra are well distributed by the gunas born of their nature. So, born of our nature, born of our subhav or our vasanas, that is what is driving us to function in the world. And that's why we appear to be different, because each one is a different combination of these vasanas, the gunas. So the soul actually does not lead an independent existence. It is dependent and is a part of God's creation. This is also a fact. The gunas are the tarnish on the Paramatman. So that is why they have to be removed, and they have to be removed by being sublimated. You have to exhaust them. That's how the tarnish goes away, and then we become one with that Paramatman. And this was covered in detail in chapters 7, 8, and 9. Then, in the materially bound state, which was covered in chapter 13 in great detail, we are under the influence of the gunas. The theory was exhaustively explained in chapter 14. So the combination of the gunas create our nature, and we will act accordingly. So a person who is power hungry will always be seeking power. A person who is wealth oriented will be looking for money. So that is what it is. Now, at the end of the dialogue, when we are ending the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjun that Arjun cannot justify withdrawal from the battle, and the refusal for the battle is only revealing Arjun's egoism, that Arjun is the doer. And to remove this, both are wrong, right? So he must fight. Arjun must fight. For us, it means we must act. But what? In accordance with our vasanas. So Arjun's vasanas, being a Kshatriya, he is in the warrior class, he has to fight. So that is the uh, lesson learning for us from this particular verse. Moving on to verse number 60. स्वभावजेन कौन्तेय निबद्धस्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत्. So the verse translates to bound by action, born of your nature, O Kaunteya, that which from delusion you do not wish to do, even that you shall do helplessly. So let's take this up word by word. Subhava Jain. So Jan is born. Subhav Jain becomes born of one's own nature. Kaunte is name for Arjun. Kunti Putra. Nibaddha is bound. Swain, by your own. Karmana, action. Kurtum, kartum, to do. Na, not. Ichhasi, ichha, so you do not wish to do. Yat, that. Mohat, from delusion, from ignorance. Karishyasi, will do. Avashah, so vash is when you have something under control. Avash becomes out of control, uncontrollable, or uncontrollably here. Api, even. Tat, that. So the verse translates to bound by action, born of your own nature, O Konteya, that which you from delusion do not wish to do, even that you shall do helplessly. So let's chant it together. स्वभावजेन कौन्तेय निबद्धस्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत्. So, in essence, what Lord is saying that I am asking you to fight. And we all know that Arjun and Krishna were great friends. So, what is the implication here is that I'm asking you to fight, not because I have no personal sympathies for you. I mean, I understand the situation that you are facing, but I'm asking you to fight because that's the only course that is left for you. You have no other choice. And your decision that you will not fight is actually born out of delusion. It is an illusion. You will have to fight because your nature is to assert itself. So, and as we just discussed in that verse, so either you fight the battle outside or you fight the battle inside. That is one. But having said that, not exhausting your vasanas to fight the battle outside, at some point of time you will fight. And let's look at this vasana bit again. We are all a bundle of vasanas, a bundle of perceptions, and that is how that is what makes me different from you and you different from someone else. So the chronology of action, which we covered in analyzed till kingdom come in chapters 3, 4, and 5, that vasana, our tendency, creates those kind of thoughts, which leads to those kind of desires and that kind of action. So my vasana for a sari will bring about those thoughts and the desire to own a sari, and then I will go to the store to buy a sari. A simple flow of action. So that is what the propeller for action is, the vasanas, the tendencies. And the vasanas or tendencies are a result of our past karmas, past actions. So how much more, while acting in our previous births, how much of more baggage have we added in the form of vasanas, and how much we have sublimated. So that is the reduction of the baggage. So, but they are a result of our past karmas. Vasanas, of course, we have classified into gunas. Gun in Sanskrit, so when we were doing chapter 14, you will recollect, it means strand, fiber, rope, something which which makes you stuck to something. So, gunas are the ropes that bind us, and we had classified the gunas into tamas, rajas, and sattva. And our action will depend upon our composition of these gunas or the texture of our vasanas. So, and in the Indian tradition, based on these proportion of the gunas, the four caste system was prescribed, so that each individual, based on his or her composition of the gunas, is able to contribute to the society and also sublimate the vasanas while acting. So these were the verses uh, 80 to 40 to 44 in brief here that we covered. And again, recapping that verse number 41, that the duties of the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra were well distributed by the gunas born of their own nature. So now, according to this classification, Arjun in the current context is a Kshatriya by nature. He is a great warrior. Now, this nature of Arjuna's is a consequence of his past lives and actions. So again, the eternal laws applies as much to Arjun as to all of us. So Arjun is a Kshatriya because of his previous births. So these are the qualities that Arjun is born with. They are inborn in Arjun. And so he is by nature a Kshatriya because of all the previous lives or previous baggage, because of all the actions that he has done. Now, you may recollect that verse number 43 of this chapter had talked about the characteristics of the Kshatriya caste, and some of them I'm reading out: prowess, splendor, steadfastness, dexterity, and not fleeing from the battle. So, these are the characteristics of a Kshatriyas. Now, but what is happening is that under the extreme current situation, Arjun does not wish to fight, does not want to fight. So we have come to likes and dislikes. So wishing means we are functioning at the level of the mind. If you've been following the rest of the chapters, so the intellect has given way and the mind has taken over. So anyway, in the current situation, Arjun does not wish to fight. What? His kith, kin, gurus, and therefore is giving plausible logical explanation which actually has its foundation in delusion to avoid this unpleasant war that stares him in the face. And in the beginning chapter, I think it was chapter 2 itself, or maybe chapter 3, he says that if both paths, so we are talking about the two paths there, that through action and through contemplation, the jnana yoga and the karma yoga. So what he's saying is that why, if I can also do get it salvation through gyan, why are you asking me to do karma action, right? I'm willing to become a yogi. I mean, as in a meditator, sannyasi. But that is not Arjun's nature. So that's why Lord Krishna has gone through this entire set of verses to explain to him that that is not your nature. You will not be happy in that sitting in the forest and meditating. That's not what Arjun is. So Arjun is giving all kinds of logic to escape from this unpleasant state of affairs. He is not ready to wage the war. He is succumbed to the emotional pressure. And because he says that I do not wish to fight, it means that he is functioning from the level of the mind. And you may recollect in the Vishwarup Darshan Yoga, when the Lord shows his cosmic form to Arjun, Arjun has already seen all the warriors enter him. So he knows that the wheel of time will take them to the Paramatman. So Krishna is therefore advising Arjun not to yield to emotion and submit to this false decision. Instead, he is required to harness his Kshatriya nature and to fight a righteous war. Krishna is reasoning with Arjun that you have misunderstood the situation and you are functioning under the influence of your ego. And instead of identifying with the ego, so when you talk of my kith, my kin, my gurus, how can I fight? So Arjun needs to come out of that and view this situation objectively. The situation requires that Arjun expresses himself. It is not possible for Arjun to flee or even remain inactive when he sees injustice being meted out. Arjun's nature as a Kshatriya or a lot of Rajas will propel him to vehemently oppose evil wherever he sees it. Arjun is a Kshatriya and it will propel him to fight as a warrior. And the eternal law of nature also tells us the same thing, that every creature to function according to one's nature helplessly, avashaha. That is a great word. We will do it, whatever it is. So a cow will continue to be a herbivore. Even if there is a drought, the cow would rather die than switch to meat. A lion is a carnivore. Again, if there is no fresh game available, hunt available, the lion would die rather than eat grass. So that is, we helplessly function according to our nature. We all have taken a body to express ourselves according to our vasanas and exhaust them, sublimate them, so that we move on our spiritual path. Therefore, it is beneficial for Arjun to express his vasanas and fight in accordance with his nature, and that is the only way out for him. So, this is what the Lord is saying in this verse. So, with that, we conclude our today's session. And